You're a nobody. Do you think you can just walk in here and act like you own the place?" Sarah, the white manger, shouted while dragging the black woman's bag, her voice echoing through the store as other customers stopped and stared. "Well, this is my store, and I can do whatever I like." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Zara, the black woman, maintaining her composure despite the blatant disrespect, responded with quiet strength. "Let go of my bag. You're discriminating against me because I'm black." Those words hit Sarah like a match to gasoline. Her face turned red with rage, and she screamed back, "Don't you dare play that card with me." And then, in a moment that changed everything, Sarah did the unthinkable. She grabbed her bottle of orange soda and poured the entire contents over Zara's head and designer outfit. The sticky liquid dripped down Zara's face, staining her expensive clothes as shocked gasps filled the store. "There. Now get out," Sarah declared triumphantly, thinking she had won this battle. But as Zara wiped the orange soda from her face with an eerie calmness that would have sent chills down anyone's spine, she looked directly at Sarah and said words that should have terrified the store manager. "You have no idea what you just did." Sarah thought she was putting Zara in her place, asserting her authority over someone she saw as beneath her. She had no clue that Zara's next phone call would flip this entire situation completely upside down, turning Sarah's world into her worst nightmare. What Sarah didn't know about the woman she just humiliated would cost her everything she thought she had. But before we reveal that shocking twist, hit that subscribe button right now, because you're not going to want to miss how this story unfolds. And trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. Do you stand against discrimination? Type yes in the comments below and tell us where you're watching from, because what happens next proves that sometimes karma works in the most unexpected ways. But let me take you back to how this all started, because the woman Sarah just humiliated had a story that would shock everyone in that store. Meet Zara Kingsley, a 38-year-old powerhouse who walked into Luxe Boutique that day with the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of building an empire from absolutely nothing. Dressed elegantly but never flashy, Zara had learned long ago that true wealth whispered rather than shouted. What nobody in that store knew was that this woman owned 15 shopping centers across 3 states, making her one of the most successful real estate moguls in the region. Zara's story was the kind that movies were made of. At just 12 years old, she had immigrated from Jamaica with her grandmother, carrying nothing but dreams and an unshakable determination to succeed. While other kids her age were worried about homework and friendships, Zara was working after school, saving every penny and studying business books from the library until closing time. By 25, she had bought her first small property. By 30, she owned her first shopping center. And by 38, she had built a multi-million-dollar empire that stretched across state lines. But here's what made Zara truly remarkable. She never forgot where she came from. She was known throughout the business world for making surprise visits to her properties, walking through them just like any regular customer to see exactly how people were being treated. She believed that how you treated strangers when you thought nobody important was watching revealed everything about your character. Now let me tell you about the woman who was about to make the biggest mistake of her career. Sarah Mitchell had been the store manager at Luxe Boutique for 6 long years, and every single day felt like a battle to prove she belonged there. At 42, Sarah was deeply insecure about her own place in the world, constantly comparing herself to the wealthy customers who walked through her store. She had grown up middle class in a small town, and even after all these years managing an upscale boutique, she still felt like an outsider looking in at a world she desperately wanted to be part of. Sarah had one very telling nervous habit. She constantly sipped from a large bottle of orange soda throughout her shifts. Whenever she felt threatened or insecure, which was often, she would gulp down that sugary drink like it was liquid courage. She was ambitious, sure, but her ambition was fueled by a toxic mixture of insecurity and a desperate need to feel superior to someone. Anyone. Working under Sarah was 25-year-old Emma Chen, a recent fashion design graduate who had taken the sales associate position at Luxe Boutique because she needed experience in high-end retail. Emma was bright, observant, and had a good heart, but she was also new and still trying to understand the complex social dynamics of the store. She had noticed certain unwritten policies that made her uncomfortable. The way certain customers were watched more closely than others, the way assumptions were made based on appearance rather than behavior. But as the newest employee, Emma felt powerless to speak up about what she was seeing. The stage was set at Luxe Boutique, the flagship store of Westfield Premium Mall, a gleaming temple to luxury and status where price tags started in the hundreds and climbed into the thousands. The store's marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and carefully curated displays of designer goods created an atmosphere that whispered exclusive to those who could afford it and unwelcome to those who couldn't. This was the world where these very different people were about to collide in a way that would change everything. Zara, the secret mogul on a routine property visit. Sarah, the insecure manager desperate to assert her authority. Emma, the young employee caught between right and wrong. And Carlos, the observant guard who saw more than anyone realized. None of them knew that this ordinary Tuesday afternoon was about to become extraordinary, and that the next few hours would expose the ugly truth about discrimination, power, and what happens when someone judges a book by its cover, without realizing they're looking at the person who owns the entire library. What happened next was a masterclass in discrimination that started the moment Zara stepped foot into that mall. She walked through the entrance of Westfield Premium Mall that Tuesday afternoon, dressed elegantly in a tailored blazer and designer jeans. Polished and professional, exactly what you'd expect from someone shopping at high-end stores. Her handbag was a subtle designer piece, expensive to those who knew luxury, but not flashy, and her entire demeanor spoke of someone comfortable in upscale environments. The moment Zara approached Luxe Boutique, Sarah Mitchell suddenly appeared like she had been watching and waiting. Sarah moved quickly, positioning herself strategically, and spoke directly to Carlos Martinez, the mall security guard. "Carlos," Sarah called out sharply, her orange soda bottle clutched tightly in her hand. She pointed directly at Zara with barely concealed hostility. "I need you to check her bag before she enters my store. Store policy for certain customers." The way she paused before saying customers made her meaning crystal clear to everyone within earshot. Now here's what made this moment absolutely infuriating and impossible to ignore. In the 5 minutes before Zara arrived, Carlos had watched 5 white customers walk into that exact same store. A middle-aged woman in yoga clothes carrying 3 large shopping bags from other stores. A young white couple with designer backpacks that could have concealed anything. An elderly white man carrying a large briefcase. And 2 white teenage girls with oversized designer purses, practically the size of overnight bags. Not one of them was stopped. Not one was questioned. Not one was asked to open their bags. They walked right through that entrance like they owned the place, completely unbothered by any security concerns. But Zara? A well-dressed black woman with a single designer handbag? Zara was immediately singled out as a security threat. Carlos felt his stomach drop. In his years of mall security, something about this felt fundamentally wrong. His military training had taught him to follow orders, but his moral compass was screaming that this was discriminatory targeting. Still, he was bound by mall protocols when store managers made specific security requests, even when those requests made him deeply uncomfortable. Carlos approached Zara with visible reluctance. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but the store manager has requested a bag check," he said quietly, trying to conduct the search as respectfully as possible while Sarah hovered nearby like a predator watching its prey. Zara looked Carlos directly in the eyes and saw the conflict there. She could tell this wasn't his idea. "Of course," she said with dignity, opening her handbag despite the humiliation of being profiled so blatantly. Carlos conducted the bag search professionally, going through Zara's handbag while Sarah stood nearby, making demeaning comments loud enough for other customers to hear. "This is a high-end establishment," Sarah announced, her voice dripping with condescension. "We have standards." The way she emphasized standards while looking at Zara made it clear she wasn't talking about merchandise. Carlos found nothing but normal items: wallet, keys, makeup, tissues, phone charger. "Everything looks fine," he said quietly, handing the bag back with an apologetic look that said he knew this was wrong. But Sarah wasn't satisfied with the clean search results. If anything, it made her more determined to find fault. "Well, that's just the entrance check," Sarah announced loudly, taking a gulp of her orange soda. "We have additional security measures throughout the store for high-value merchandise." Once inside, Sarah's psychological warfare escalated to the next level. She immediately cornered Emma Chen, the young sales associate who was arranging a display near the entrance. "Emma," Sarah whispered urgently, but not quietly enough to avoid being overheard, "I need you to follow that woman around the store. Stay close to her and watch everything she touches. Document anything suspicious." Emma's heart sank as she looked at Zara, who was calmly examining the store layout like any normal customer. This was exactly the discriminatory, unwritten policy that had been keeping her awake at night. She had witnessed this same treatment applied to other Black and Latino customers, and every time it made her feel complicit in something fundamentally wrong. "But Sarah," Emma said quietly, "she seems like a perfectly normal customer." "Did I ask for your opinion?" Sarah snapped, taking another aggressive gulp of her soda. "This is how we maintain security. If you can't handle basic job requirements, maybe you're not cut out for luxury retail." Emma felt trapped. As the newest employee still in her probationary period, she desperately needed this job to pay off her student loans. Speaking up felt like career suicide, but following these orders made her sick. So Zara tried to shop in peace while Emma awkwardly shadowed her every move. Zara examined beautiful dresses with the eye of someone who understood quality, running her fingers along fabric textures and checking stitching details with careful attention. Meanwhile, Sarah positioned herself strategically around the store, making loud commentary clearly intended for everyone to hear. "Some people just don't understand the value of quality merchandise," Sarah would announce to other customers while gesturing in Zara's direction. "You can always tell when someone is out of their element in a place like this." Other customers began noticing the strange dynamic. Some looked uncomfortable with Sarah's obvious bias, while others seemed to buy into the narrative that this Black woman was somehow different, somehow suspicious. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment Sarah crossed from discrimination into criminal territory. Zara had moved to examine an intricate beaded dress, completely absorbed in the craftsmanship, reading the designer label and checking the sizing chart. While Zara was distracted, Sarah saw her opportunity. Moving under the pretense of organizing nearby jewelry, Sarah carefully selected a $400 gold bracelet from the display case. With calculated stealth that suggested this might not have been her first time, Sarah slipped the bracelet into Zara's open handbag, placing it where it would be easily discovered during a search. Sarah's heart raced with vindictive satisfaction as she stepped back. Now she had her insurance policy, her trump card to justify every discriminatory action. Emma was positioned about 10 feet away when she noticed Sarah acting strangely near the jewelry section. Something about Sarah's body language seemed off. Too careful, too deliberate. Emma couldn't see exactly what was happening, but every instinct told her something was wrong. Meanwhile, Zara continued shopping, completely unaware she had just been set up for something devastating. She selected several items with impeccable taste. A stunning emerald green designer dress, matching Italian leather shoes, and carefully chosen accessories. The total came to $5,200, exactly the kind of high-value transaction that should have had Sarah rolling out the red carpet. Instead, Sarah saw this as the perfect opportunity to escalate her psychological assault. "Ma'am," Sarah said loudly enough for every customer to hear, approaching with a patronizing smile. "Do you realize how much these items cost?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Sarah was essentially asking a grown woman if she could do basic math, implying someone who looked like Zara couldn't possibly afford to shop there. The store went quiet as other customers stopped to watch this exchange. But Sarah wasn't done humiliating Zara. "The total comes to $5,200, Sarah continued slowly, like she was explaining something complicated to a child. "That's $5,200. Are you sure you understand what that means?" Zara maintained remarkable composure. "I'm quite capable of managing my finances, thank you," she replied calmly, though there was steel in her voice. But Sarah wasn't satisfied. She actually demanded proof of Zara's ability to pay. "I'm going to need to see your money before we go any further," Sarah announced, gulping her orange soda. "I've seen too many people embarrass themselves trying to buy things beyond their means. I'm just trying to save you from that humiliation." Throughout this exchange, Sarah kept glancing at Zara's handbag with a knowing look. She knew exactly what was planted inside, and her confidence was growing by the minute. When Zara presented her Black American Express card, Sarah's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She examined it with exaggerated suspicion, turning it over multiple times like it was evidence in a criminal investigation. "This doesn't look right," Sarah announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "The numbers seem off. I'm going to need to verify this card isn't stolen." What happened next was a masterclass in public humiliation. Sarah called the credit card company right there in front of everyone, speaking loudly about fraudulent activity and making pointed comments about fake credit cards and identity theft. She was essentially accusing Zara of being a criminal in front of a store full of strangers. "Yes, I have a customer here trying to use what appears to be a suspicious credit card," Sarah said into the phone, her voice carrying across the store. "I need you to verify this isn't stolen." Even when the transaction was approved and the card verified as legitimate, Sarah refused to back down. "Computer errors happen all the time," she claimed, still acting suspicious. "Just because the system approved it doesn't mean everything is on the up and up." But inside, Sarah was feeling more confident and powerful than she had all day. Because she knew something nobody else knew. She had her ace in the hole sitting right there in Zara's handbag, waiting to be discovered. If you're enjoying this story and can't believe this level of discrimination, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will blow your mind. Sarah thought she was so clever with her setup, but she had no idea who she was really dealing with. What happened next was the moment Sarah decided to spring her carefully planned trap, and it was absolutely diabolical. This was the culmination of everything she had been building towards since the moment Zara walked into her store. Sarah had been watching Zara complete her transaction, nervously sipping her orange soda, while her confidence grew with every passing second. She knew exactly what was waiting to be discovered in that handbag. And she was running out of time to execute her plan. The credit card had been approved, the purchase was going through, and if Zara left the store now, Sarah would lose her opportunity to spring the trap she had so carefully set. Sarah's hand started shaking slightly as the adrenaline kicked in. She knew she was about to accuse someone of a crime they didn't commit. But in her twisted, discriminatory mind, she felt completely justified. This was her moment to prove that her suspicions had been right all along. Her chance to be the hero who caught a thief red-handed. Taking one more nervous gulp of her orange soda to steel her nerves, Sarah suddenly put on the performance of her life. Her face lit up with fake realization, like someone who had just remembered something absolutely crucial. "Wait a minute," she exclaimed loudly, her voice echoing through the store as every conversation stopped and every head turned. She pointed dramatically at Zara with theatrical outrage that would have made a Broadway actress proud. "I saw you put something in your bag from the jewelry section." The entire store went dead silent. Every customer browsing through racks of clothes, every employee organizing displays, every person within earshot stopped what they were doing and turned to stare at this unfolding drama. The background music seemed to fade away as the weight of the accusation hung in the air. You could have heard a pin drop as everyone processed what they had just heard. But Sarah wasn't done with her Oscar-worthy performance. She continued pointing at Zara with increasingly theatrical outrage, her voice getting louder and more accusatory with each word. You took that gold bracelet when you thought no one was looking. I saw you slip it into your purse when you were pretending to examine those dresses. The accusation was so specific, so detailed, that some of the other customers actually started to believe it might be true. After all, why would a store manager make up such a precise claim if she hadn't actually seen something? Zara's face showed genuine confusion and shock that was impossible to fake. After enduring systematic discrimination and humiliation for the past hour, she was now being accused of theft, a serious crime she absolutely did not commit. Her voice filled with disbelief as she responded, "What? I haven't taken anything. This is absolutely ridiculous." But Sarah was fully committed to her lie now, and there was no backing down. She had crossed the line from discrimination into outright criminal behavior by planting evidence, and now she had to see it through to the end. She took another nervous gulp of her orange soda, her hands trembling slightly, and declared with fake authority, "I'm going to need to search your bag immediately. It's store policy for suspected theft, and I know what I saw." This was the moment when Zara's patience, which had been stretched to its absolute limit over the past hour, finally snapped completely. She had endured the discriminatory bag search at the entrance that no white customer had been subjected to. She had tolerated being followed around the store like a criminal. She had maintained her composure through psychological warfare about her ability to afford merchandise. She had stayed calm during the humiliating credit card verification process. But being falsely accused of theft? That was the final straw that broke her restraint. "This is racial profiling and I will not tolerate it," Zara declared firmly, her voice carrying throughout the store as she clutched her handbag protectively against her body. "You have singled me out from the moment I walked into this store, treated me differently than every other customer, and now you're making completely false accusations." Sarah's eyes flashed with a mixture of rage and desperation. Her carefully planned scheme was starting to fall apart because Zara wasn't submitting to the search that would reveal the planted bracelet. Without that evidence, Sarah's entire house of cards would collapse. That's when Sarah decided to abandon all pretense of professionalism and take matters into her own hands in the most shocking way possible. "I know what I saw. You're a thief," Sarah screamed as she lunged forward with surprising aggression and tried to forcefully grab Zara's handbag right out of her hands. What happened next was a physical struggle that left everyone in the store absolutely stunned. Zara, acting on pure instinct to protect her personal property, held onto her handbag with both hands while Sarah pulled and tugged with increasing desperation. "Let go of my bag!" Zara shouted as Sarah yanked on the straps like a wild animal. The struggle was intense and frightening to watch. Sarah was pulling on the bag straps with both hands, while Zara held onto the body of the purse, both women locked in a physical battle over Zara's personal property. The handbag was being stretched and twisted between them as Sarah's desperation reached fever pitch. Other customers backed away in shock and horror, some covering their mouths in disbelief, others pulling out their phones to record this insane confrontation. Children started crying as their parents hurried them away from the violence. This was supposed to be an upscale shopping experience, not a scene from a crime drama. But then Zara said something that made Sarah's blood run cold and her face go white with terror. Looking directly into Sarah's eyes with laser focus, Zara accused, "You planted something, didn't you? That's why you're so desperate to search my bag. You put something in there when I wasn't looking." The accuracy of Zara's accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. For a split second, her mask of righteous indignation slipped, and everyone could see the guilt and panic in her eyes. But instead of backing down or confessing, Sarah doubled down on her lies and started screaming at the top of her lungs with even more hysteria. "Security! She's resisting arrest for theft! This woman is a criminal!" Sarah shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation as she continued trying to wrestle the handbag away from Zara. Emma Chen watched this entire scene unfold in absolute horror, her hands covering her mouth in shock. She had never seen anything like this in her life, and she was paralyzed with disbelief at how far Sarah was willing to go with her discriminatory attack. Emma wanted to speak up, to say something, to help somehow, but she was frozen with fear and complete disbelief at what she was witnessing. Carlos Martinez heard Sarah's screams from across the mall and started approaching cautiously, but something about the whole situation felt fundamentally wrong to his experienced eye. His years of security work and military training told him that real thieves didn't usually fight this hard to avoid a bag search, and Zara's outrage seemed genuine rather than guilty. The body language was all wrong for someone who had actually committed a crime. But Sarah wasn't done with her campaign of destruction. When she realized that her physical attempt to grab the bag wasn't working, that Zara was stronger than she expected, and that people were starting to question her story, she decided to escalate the situation in the most shocking and unforgivable way imaginable. Sarah was desperate beyond reason. Her carefully planned scheme was crumbling before her eyes. Zara was fighting back with unexpected strength and intelligence, and people were starting to see through her lies. The planted evidence was useless if she couldn't get to it, and her reputation was on the line. That's when Sarah did something that crossed every line of human decency, professional conduct, and basic civility. In a moment of pure rage, frustration, and vindictive hatred, Sarah lifted her bottle of orange soda, the same bottle she had been nervously drinking from all day, and deliberately poured the entire contents over Zara's head and designer outfit. The sticky, sugary liquid splashed everywhere, soaking through Zara's carefully styled hair, staining her expensive blazer and jeans, and dripping onto the store's pristine marble floor. The orange soda ran down Zara's face and neck, ruining her makeup and leaving her standing there like the victim of a food fight. The collective gasp from other customers was audible throughout the store and even out into the mall corridor. People couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. A store manager, a person in a position of authority and trust, had just physically assaulted a customer with a beverage in front of dozens of witnesses. Phones came out immediately as people started recording this unbelievable scene. But Sarah wasn't done with her Academy Award-worthy performance. The moment that orange soda left her bottle, she immediately started screaming like she was the victim of a violent attack. "Help! She attacked me! She's violent!" Sarah shouted at the top of her lungs, pointing at Zara, who was standing there dripping with soda, clearly the actual victim of Sarah's assault. "She's a thief, and now she's assaulting me," Sarah continued screaming, putting on the performance of her life as she tried to convince everyone that she was somehow the victim in this situation. "Someone call the police. This woman is dangerous." The irony was absolutely mind-blowing and infuriating to watch. Sarah had just poured soda on an innocent customer and was now claiming that she was the one being attacked. It was gaslighting and manipulation at its most extreme and disgusting level. Sarah clutched her empty soda bottle like it was evidence of Zara's supposed violence, waving it around dramatically while continuing to point and scream about being attacked by a violent thief. She was literally trying to rewrite history in real time, attempting to convince everyone that the victim was actually the aggressor. Meanwhile, Zara stood there dripping with orange soda, and what happened next was perhaps the most impressive display of grace under pressure that anyone in that store had ever witnessed. Despite being physically assaulted, falsely accused, publicly humiliated, and now covered in sticky soda, Zara maintained incredible composure. She slowly wiped the orange liquid from her face with remarkable dignity, never once losing her cool or retaliating despite having every reason to be furious. Her calm demeanor in the face of such outrageous treatment actually made Sarah's hysteria look even more unhinged by comparison. A crowd had gathered around this scene, with people filming the entire confrontation on their phones. They had just witnessed one of the most outrageous displays of discrimination, false accusations, physical assault, and manipulative victimhood that any of them had ever seen in their lives. Sarah continued her victim act, clutching her empty soda bottle and pointing at Zara while screaming about being attacked by a violent criminal, all while Zara stood there calmly, clearly the actual victim of everything that had just transpired. What none of them knew, not Sarah, not the crowd, not even Emma or Carlos, was that the woman standing there covered in orange soda, falsely accused and publicly humiliated, was about to make a phone call that would completely flip this situation and expose Sarah for the discriminatory criminal she truly was. What happened next was perhaps the most powerful display of composure under pressure that anyone in that store had ever witnessed, and it set the stage for the most shocking revelation you could possibly imagine. While Sarah continued her hysterical performance, screaming about being attacked and demanding that someone call the police, Zara did something that completely defied everyone's expectations. Instead of screaming back, instead of causing a scene, instead of retaliating in any way, Zara reached into her purse with the calmest movements you've ever seen and pulled out a small packet of tissues. Standing there dripping with orange soda, her expensive clothes stained and her hair sticky with sugary liquid, Zara began quietly wiping the mess from her face. Her movements were deliberate, composed, almost meditative in their calmness. It was like watching someone clean up after a minor spill, rather than someone who had just been physically assaulted and falsely accused of theft. The contrast between Sarah's hysteria and Zara's composure was absolutely striking. While Sarah continued pointing and screaming, waving her empty soda bottle around like evidence of some great crime, Zara methodically cleaned herself up with a dignity that was almost supernatural. Then, still moving with that same eerie calm, Zara reached back into her handbag and pulled out her phone. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breathing wasn't labored. She showed no signs of the stress or panic that anyone would expect from someone in her situation. It was like she had ice water in her veins. Meanwhile, Carlos Martinez had finally arrived at the scene, having heard Sarah's screams from across the mall. But instead of immediately taking charge, he stood at the edge of the crowd, observing the situation with the trained eye of someone who had seen plenty of real emergencies and plenty of fake drama. Sarah immediately pounced on Carlos's arrival like it was her salvation. "Carlos, thank God you're here," she shrieked, still clutching her empty soda bottle. "Check her bag. She stole a gold bracelet from the jewelry section. I caught her red-handed, and then she attacked me when I tried to stop her." Sarah was pointing frantically between Zara and her own soda-stained clothes, trying to sell the narrative that she was somehow the victim in this situation. "She's dangerous. She's violent. She assaulted me when I discovered her theft." But while Sarah was busy with her performance, something extraordinary was happening just a few feet away. Zara had dialed a number on her phone, and what came out of her mouth next would change everything for everyone in that store. "Hi, Marcus," Zara said in a voice so calm and professional that it cut through Sarah's hysteria like a knife through butter. "It's Zara. I'm at Westfield Premium Mall. Yes, our newest acquisition." The word acquisition hung in the air like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit the picture everyone thought they were looking at. Emma Chen, who was standing close enough to hear fragments of the conversation, tilted her head in confusion. Acquisition? What did that mean? But Zara wasn't done. She continued her conversation with the same professional tone you might use to discuss quarterly reports or schedule a business meeting, the Luxe Boutique store specifically. We have a significant management problem that requires immediate attention." Sarah was still ranting at Carlos, completely oblivious to the conversation happening right behind her. "She's a thief. I have witnesses. I saw her steal that bracelet with my own eyes." Sarah was so focused on her lies that she wasn't paying attention to anything else happening around her. Carlos, however, was starting to pick up pieces of Zara's phone conversation, and something about it was making him increasingly uncomfortable with Sarah's demands. His military training had taught him to gather all available information before taking action, and right now, the information wasn't adding up the way Sarah wanted it to. "I understand you want me to search her bag," Carlos said slowly to Sarah, "but I need to assess the full situation first. Can you show me exactly where this alleged theft took place?" Sarah's confidence was still sky high because she knew exactly what would be found in that bag. Of course, she took it from the jewelry counter when she thought no one was looking, but I was watching her the whole time. Meanwhile, Zara continued her mysterious phone call, and what she said next said to chill through everyone who was listening carefully enough to hear it. "I need you to contact our legal team and the mall's corporate office immediately," Zara said, still in that same calm professional tone. "We're going to need documentation of everything that's happened here today." Emma caught that phrase, "our legal team," and felt her stomach drop. Who was this woman that she had a legal team? And what did she mean by our corporate office? Emma moved closer, straining to hear more of the conversation while trying not to be obvious about it. Carlos was also picking up pieces of the call now, and his years of security experience were telling him that something was very, very wrong with this entire situation. Real thieves didn't talk about legal teams and corporate offices. Real thieves tried to get away as quickly as possible. But Sarah was still completely focused on her planted evidence, demanding that Carlos search the bag immediately. "What are you waiting for?" she snapped at him. "I'm telling you she's a thief. Check her bag and you'll find the bracelet." Sarah's confidence was unshakable because she knew exactly where she had placed that gold bracelet and exactly what would happen when it was discovered. In her mind, she was moments away from being vindicated, from proving that her suspicions and discriminatory treatment had been justified all along. But then Zara said something that made the entire situation take a turn that nobody saw coming. "Also, pull the employee files for this location." Zara continued into her phone, her voice still maddeningly calm and professional. "We'll need them for immediate termination proceedings." That phrase, immediate termination proceedings, hit Emma like a physical blow. Who was this woman that she could authorize terminations? Emma fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she tried to process what she was hearing. Carlos heard it too, and suddenly the name the woman had used at the beginning of her call clicked into place in his memory. "Zara," she had said, and something about that name was familiar, like he had heard it recently in a context that was completely different from what he was experiencing right now. Carlos moved closer to Emma, who was frantically typing something into her phone. "Emma," he whispered urgently, "did she say her name was Zara?" Emma nodded, her eyes wide with growing confusion and concern. "Zara something. She's talking about employee files and terminations. Carlos, who is this woman?" Carlos felt a chill run down his spine as fragments of recent conversations and company emails started coming together in his mind. "I think," he started, then stopped, pulling out his own phone to confirm what he was starting to suspect. Meanwhile, Sarah was getting increasingly frustrated with Carlos's hesitation. "What is taking so long?" she demanded. "I'm telling you to search her bag. I'm the store manager and I'm giving you a direct order." But Carlos was no longer paying attention to Sarah's demands. He was staring at his phone screen, his face growing pale as he confirmed what he was starting to remember about recent business news in the mall industry. "Emma," Carlos whispered, his voice tight with shock, "Google Zara Kingsley business acquisitions." Emma's fingers flew over her phone screen, and what she found made her gasp out loud. Her eyes went wide as she stared at the search results. then looked up at Zara, then back at her phone, then back at Zara again. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "Carlos, do you see this?" Carlos leaned over to look at Emma's phone screen, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. There, in multiple recent business articles, was a photo of the exact same woman who was standing in front of them, covered in orange soda, being accused of theft by Sarah Mitchell. The headlines told a story that completely flipped everything they thought they knew about this situation. Real estate mogul Zara Kingsley expands mall empire. Shopping center acquisition spree continues for Kingsley Properties. Luxury mall chain sold to Kingsley Development Group. "Carlos," Emma whispered, her voice shaking, "she owns shopping malls. She owns multiple shopping centers. And look at this article from last month." Carlos read the headline that Emma was pointing to and felt his knees go weak. Kingsley Properties acquires Westfield Premium Mall in multi-million-dollar deal. The realization hit them both like a freight train. The woman that Sarah had been discriminating against, following around the store, falsely accusing of theft, and physically assaulting with orange soda, was not just any customer. She was the owner of the mall. She was Sarah's boss's boss's boss. Emma and Carlos looked at each other with expressions of absolute horror, then slowly turned to look at Sarah, who was still demanding that the bag be searched, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to come crashing down around her. Sarah was so focused on her planted evidence and her false accusations that she hadn't heard a single word of Zara's phone conversation. She had no idea that the woman she had just assaulted was about to destroy her career with a single phone call. If you were in Zara's shoes, what would you do to Sarah after revealing yourself? Let us know in the comments, because what happens when Zara reveals her true identity is going to leave Sarah wishing she had never gotten out of bed that morning. What happened next was the moment that would be talked about in that mall for years to come. And it was about to turn Sarah's world completely upside down. Zara finished her phone conversation with the same calm professionalism she had maintained throughout this entire ordeal. She ended the call, slipped her phone back into her handbag, and then did something that sent chills down the spine of everyone who was paying attention. She turned to face Sarah directly, looked her straight in the eyes, and spoke in a voice so calm and authoritative that it cut through all the chaos like a sword. "I own this mall," Zara said, each word hitting like a hammer blow. "I own your store. I am your employer." The entire crowd went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that massive store as everyone processed what they had just heard. Sarah's confident expression, which had been fueled by her certainty that she was about to be vindicated by the planted evidence, crumbled like a house of cards in an earthquake. Sarah's face went through a series of emotions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, fear, and then desperate denial. "That's impossible," she sputtered, her voice cracking with panic. "You're lying. There's no way you could own this mall. Look at you." Even in her moment of panic, Sarah couldn't help but reveal the racist assumptions that had driven her behavior all along. She was essentially saying that someone who looked like Zara couldn't possibly be wealthy or powerful enough to own a shopping mall. But Zara wasn't done delivering devastating blows to Sarah's crumbling world. Her next words were delivered with surgical precision, designed to destroy any remaining delusions Sarah might have had about how this situation was going to end. "Check my ID if you don't believe me," Zara said calmly, reaching into her handbag. "Then check the bracelet you planted in my bag when you thought I wasn't looking." That second sentence hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her face went completely white as she realized that Zara not only knew about the planted evidence, but was calling her out on it in front of everyone. Sarah's legs started shaking as the full magnitude of what she had done began to dawn on her. The crowd gasped audibly as they realized what Zara was saying. Sarah hadn't just discriminated against a customer. She had planted evidence to frame her for theft. This wasn't just about poor customer service or bias. This was about criminal behavior. Zara continued speaking in that same calm, authoritative voice that commanded attention from everyone in the store. Your employment is terminated effective immediately for assault, discrimination, and planting evidence to frame an innocent customer. The words, "You're fired," have probably never carried more weight or been delivered with more devastating calm than in that moment. Sarah's entire world, her job, her reputation, her future, was disintegrating in real time in front of dozens of witnesses. But Sarah wasn't ready to accept her fate. In a desperate attempt to salvage something from this disaster, she started backtracking frantically, her voice rising to a near shriek. I thought I saw. This is all just a misunderstanding," she stammered, looking around wildly for someone, anyone, who might support her story. But there was no support coming. Emma Chen, who had been watching this entire scene unfold with growing horror, finally found her voice and her courage. "Sarah," Emma said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I saw you acting strange near the jewelry section. You were being secretive about something, and now I know what it was." Emma's testimony was like the final nail in Sarah's coffin. Here was her own employee, someone who had witnessed her suspicious behavior, confirming that Sarah had indeed been up to something at the jewelry counter. Carlos Martinez, who had been putting the pieces together throughout this entire confrontation, stepped forward with his professional security training taking over. "I'm going to need to review the security footage immediately," he announced. "If evidence was planted, the cameras will show exactly when and how it happened." Sarah's face went from white to green as she realized that there was video evidence of her crime. Security cameras didn't lie, and they certainly didn't have racial bias. The footage would show exactly what she had done and exactly when she had done it. At that moment, mall management arrived on the scene, having been contacted during Zara's phone call. The mall director, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit, approached the crowd cautiously, clearly having been briefed on the situation, but still trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. "Miss Kingsley," the mall director said, his voice filled with both respect and barely concealed panic, "I am so sorry about what has happened here today. We had no idea that our newest property owner was, that you were." His words confirmed what everyone was beginning to understand. This wasn't just some random claim of wealth or power. This woman really was the owner of the mall, and Sarah really had just assaulted and discriminated against her own ultimate boss. Zara nodded at the mall director with professional courtesy, then opened her handbag in front of everyone. Reaching inside, she pulled out a gold bracelet that none of them had ever seen before. The same bracelet that Sarah had planted during her deceptive trip to the jewelry counter. "This bracelet was placed in my bag without my knowledge while I was shopping," Zara announced, holding it up for everyone to see. "The security cameras will show exactly when it was planted and by whom." The crowd murmured in amazement and disgust as they realized they were looking at evidence of an attempted frame-up. Sarah had literally tried to plant evidence to justify her discriminatory treatment and false accusations. Carlos was already on his radio, coordinating with the mall's security office to pull up the relevant footage. "We'll have the video evidence within minutes," he announced. "The cameras in this store record everything with timestamps." Sarah made one last desperate attempt to save herself, her voice breaking with panic and desperation. "This is all just a big misunderstanding. I thought I saw something. I was just trying to protect the store. I never meant for any of this to happen." But her protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Her behavior had been witnessed by dozens of people, and there was video footage that would confirm her criminal actions. Zara looked at Sarah with a mixture of disappointment and determination as she delivered what amounted to a sentencing. "Discrimination is bad enough," she said, her voice carrying throughout the store, "but planting evidence to frame innocent people is criminal behavior that will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." The mall director nodded gravely. "Criminal charges will be filed immediately. We have zero tolerance for this kind of behavior, especially from someone in a position of trust and authority. But Zara wasn't done cleaning house. She turned to Emma Chen, who had been standing nearby with a mixture of shock and relief on her face. "Emma," Zara said, her voice warming for the first time that day, "I want to offer you Sarah's position as store manager. Your integrity in speaking up about what you witnessed shows the kind of character we want in leadership positions." Emma's eyes widened in shock. In the span of an hour, she had gone from being afraid to speak up about discrimination to being offered a promotion for having the courage to tell the truth. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I promise I'll run this store with fairness and respect for everyone." Zara nodded approvingly, then addressed the crowd of customers and employees who had witnessed this entire dramatic confrontation. "Effective immediately, all of our properties will implement comprehensive anti-discrimination and anti-fraud policies. Every employee will receive training on treating all customers with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance, race, or perceived economic status." The crowd began to applaud, many of them pulling out their phones to share what they had just witnessed. This wasn't just a story about one racist manager getting fired. This was about systemic change and accountability. As mall security arrived to escort Sarah from the premises, she made one final attempt to play the victim. "This isn't fair," she screamed as she was led away. "I was just doing my job. I was protecting the store." But her protests only made her look more delusional and less sympathetic. Everyone had seen what really happened, and there was no way to spin assault, discrimination, and evidence planting as just doing your job. Carlos returned with the security footage, which clearly showed Sarah planting the bracelet in Zara's bag while she was distracted at the dress display. The timestamp and multiple camera angles left no doubt about what had happened and when. "The evidence is conclusive," Carlos announced. "The footage shows the entire incident, including the planting of evidence and the subsequent assault." As the dust settled on this incredible confrontation, Zara made one final statement that resonated with everyone who had witnessed these events. "Today proved something important," she said, addressing the crowd. "The truth always comes to light. No matter how clever people think they are, no matter how elaborate their schemes, justice has a way of finding them." She paused, looking around at the faces of the people who had watched this drama unfold. "We all have choices to make about how we treat others. We can choose to see people as individuals deserving of respect, or we can choose to make assumptions based on appearance and prejudice. But remember, you never know who you're really talking to, and more importantly, everyone deserves to be treated with basic human dignity, regardless of who they are." The crowd erupted in applause as Zara completed her purchase, the same purchase that had started this entire confrontation, now being processed by Emma with the utmost respect and professionalism. As Zara walked out of the store carrying her shopping bags, having transformed from victim to victor in the span of a few hours, she left behind a changed environment. The discriminatory culture that had allowed Sarah's behavior to flourish was being dismantled in real time, replaced by policies that would protect future customers from experiencing what Zara had endured. If this story has you thinking about the power of standing up to discrimination and the importance of treating everyone with respect, hit that subscribe button, because this is exactly the kind of justice we all want to see in the world. The truth always comes to light, and when it does, it has the power to change everything.